Hi, everyone. Teresa Aker here from Success Diaries with Teresa Aker. It's my pleasure today to bring you Meg Lamm. She's a relationship coach, and I have a lot of questions. Hi, Meg. How you doing?
Hi, Teresa. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here. I'm excited for your audience. I hope they take something away from our conversation that is valuable and that they can implement in their lives immediately.
I know they will. That's why I have you here today, Meg, because I know you're good at this. So let's start with how it all got started, Meg.
Yeah, let's. So I was married for 14 years, and it turned out that I was trying to be the perfect wife that whole time, right? Like I realized I was trying to be the perfect wife during all those 14 years, and turns out that actually ruined my relationship and many relationships, like being the perfect mother, being the perfect daughter, being the perfect friend, right? It doesn't work well. Yeah.
I'm with you. I did the very exact same thing when I was young in my first marriage. I've been married a few times. It is
Hmm.
what it is, but
Hmm.
I agree with you. We have a pattern, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that is what happened is I was noticing that after I was married, I was having the same kind of pattern in my next partnered relationships, right? And I realized that the common denominator kind of had to be me. So I went on this journey of discovery and what was happening within myself and how I was creating these same types of relationships over and over, right? All we want are to have satisfying, fulfilling relationships and feeling heard and feeling seen, feeling important, feeling understood, right? And I felt like I kept, like it would start out that way, then I kept like missing the mark, right? Somewhere it would fall short of that. And what I realized was that by me trying to be the Pinterest wife or, the perfect mom, I I was trying to fulfill something that wasn't necessarily mine. I was just looking to all these external sources to show me what I was supposed to be and supposed to do. And it was failing. It wasn't working because it wasn't me, right? It wasn't aligned. It wasn't authentic with who I was.
I understand completely, Meg. I did exactly the same thing. We talked a little bit before about that. I did the
Hmm.
exact same thing in my first marriage, actually in my second. To tell you the truth, I had a pattern for a while. I have been married three times. I finally
Hmm.
got it right.
Hmm.
However, it's true. I was worrying about being the great mom, like you said, being there for the children, being there for my husband, but I hadn't grown and we hadn't had that discussion of so I was saying I wanted to plan my wedding. That I
Hmm.
remember that was so important, planning my wedding.
Hmm.
That even my second marriage, I had the girls already, and I wanted to have the perfect wedding. I don't know what I was thinking. It was just something in me that just said, I want to have this perfect wedding, perfect marriage, perfect everything. And there's no such thing. In
Hmm.
fact, I lost myself in those. I did,
Mm,
however, get it right the next time.
yeah, I think that that is very common. And what you're saying is like, we're planning the wedding, we're planning the day, but we're not planning who we're going to be with each other, like making decisions together. How are we going to even make decisions together? We're not having those kinds of conversations. I shouldn't say that like as a blanket statement, but it is happening more and more in younger generations now. I feel that they're having these kinds of conversations, actually discussing, their own emotions, their own feelings about things before they go into it, just assuming. We're assuming all over the place that people have the same ideals as us, the same values, that when we have kids, we have the same idea about who's going to go to work and how we're going to make the money and what we're going to do with our money and where are we going to live. Like we're assuming, never speaking about it. And then when those expectations aren't met or something falls short, we're just devastated, right? And we don't understand how we got there. And all of a sudden, like we aren't speaking and we don't know how to come back together or how to get back on the same page or how to reconnect or how to have those really hard conversations or how to be transparent. It feels so risky and scary and tender, right? To expose those parts of ourselves. But if we don't, I promise that's where we're missing the mark.
You are so right, Megan. And as I think about even dating, one of the big things I learned not to do later on in life, because I certainly did date later on, I learned to stop analyzing and ruminating every
Mhm.
time I dated someone. Stop
Mhm.
beating myself up. Did I do the right thing? Is he going to dump me? And guess what? I got dumped lots. Who cares, right? Because they weren't meant to be in your circle. They weren't
Mhm.
meant to be the guy for you. Stop
Mhm.
trying to hold on to something that just isn't going to happen, and it's not personal. I think you said it earlier, and you're bang on. It's not personal. It's just
Mhm.
not the right person for you. And if you're strong enough in your own identity, you recognize it quickly. It doesn't even bother you. You're like, nope, that's not the one. Nope, that's not the one.
Precisely what you said, the magic word, strong in my own identity. Do we take the time? So this was my issue in my marriage and then moving forward in other relationships, was that I hadn't taken the time or been taught how to know myself.
Yeah.
What is important to me? Who do I want to be in any given situation, right? Once I know that, every decision is easy. Like, is this taking me closer to the person I want to be? And even doing that in our relationship, right? Okay, who do we want to be as a couple? How do we want to operate? Okay, if we know this and that's established, okay, is that taking me closer to that? Is that taking, but instead, what I think we have is this misunderstanding, this idea of we just want the relationship, right? Like the relationship is the thing to want,
That's
not what's inside the relationship, not how we're going to operate together. And yeah, that takes a lot of vulnerable conversation. That takes a lot of hard conversation, like to be able to have those talks back and forth, like, this is who I am. How does that work for you? How does that fit for you? How are we going to incorporate these things into our lives together? Right? Because I think people avoid those. They're risky. And there's always that fear of maybe rejection, right? Or that isn't going to work for me. But like you said, if I'm solid enough, then I know, okay, then this simply isn't meant for me right now because I am not willing to compromise me, right? I'm not willing to sacrifice me just in order to have a relationship, in order to be liked, loved, or approved of.
Now, let me ask you something, Megan, as we're on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
How do men feel about us asking them? Are they willing to be vulnerable themselves? Are they
Mm,
willing to tell you in their own
mm-hmm.
words? Are
Mm-hmm.
they willing to talk to you about a future while you're dating? What is your
Mm-hmm.
experience, Meg?
I believe that these younger generations absolutely are. They're actually into it. I have met several young men that are very much in this same boat, right? They don't want to end up just in a relationship just because it's the relationship, right? Like we want relationships to be satisfying, to be fulfilling, to actually enhance our being, right? That's what the relationship does, and we do that with and for each other. So yes, I do find that younger men absolutely are. Men my generation, even a little bit older, it's not something again that they were taught. They weren't taught how to be that. They weren't taught how to be vulnerable. They weren't taught how to share their emotions or an experience, right? But they can do it. And what I find is that when they do it, they realize how satisfying it is for them because they are actually allowing themselves to get in touch with themselves. They're not also just trying to fulfill some macho role,
Yeah.
like what was taught to them, what they were kind of, for lack of better words, programmed or indoctrinated to be, right? Like you see this thing and you think you're supposed to be it. And how can I be this, this version of a man? But really getting in touch with what do they think a man is, what is a role that they want to fulfill in a relationship, how do they want to be present. Once they start realizing the benefit of doing that for themselves, it becomes easier because then it's like, okay, it's scary at first, but I can bring this more naturally into the relationship and can then see how it feeds them, like the relationship then feeds them too, right? Because they know what it is that they want to provide. Does that make sense?
It certainly does, Meg. You're very
Mhm.
good. Thank you.
Thanks.
I would ask also, let's say, and as you've definitely separated the generational gap
Hmm.
between
Hmm.
the dating, when
Hmm.
we were younger and dating now and dating in this world as opposed to the
Hmm.
past world. I
Hmm.
would look at also, and you definitely brought it forward, the men have changed too, and that is
Hmm.
a very real thing. So we have changed as women. I think we've become more confident. That's just a general statement. I do
Hmm.
think we have become more confident. We do know more of what we want. The younger women, that younger than me, certainly a lot younger than me, they seem to have a pretty good handle on what they want in life. And I respect that. I wish I had that kind of strength when I was young. I
Hmm.
would, however, think that the men, because they're coming into from a different angle of relationships, I think they're being very cautious, but
Hmm.
I think they're opening up. But is caution a factor, do you think, or?
So what I hear you saying is like they're not opening up. I still think like we tend to have at times this misperception of
Yeah.
men, right? Like that they don't feel, or that they don't have emotions because they've been taught to hide them very well. I mean, we all have, right?
Oh,
Certainly my generation. Like, there's
I
nothing for you to cry about. Go to the cry room. Like, you can't have that at the table. We don't talk about that. So now men even more than women, right?
yeah,
They were taught that men don't cry, don't be a baby, those kinds of things. So I think we have this misperception because it was never safe for them to present
perfect.
with emotion, or that they do feel sad, or that they do feel worried, that they did a very good job of suppressing those things. And then that comes out in like anger and rage and and those kinds of things. But so I do think that they do have this very tender part that if we can, you know, make our way in there and make it safe for them to express those emotions, that it becomes very genuine and a very real exchange, right? Like instead of, like, how are you? Fine. Great. Oh, my day sucked. Like those kinds of things. It becomes more of a space where they can be like, oh my gosh, like my boss was mad at me today and it just made me feel really crappy about myself because I started second guessing. Like those kinds of conversations are the ones that create that deep emotional intimacy, right? When we can each risk exposing ourselves to the other. And I think men do want to do it. It's just a little bit more, it might take a little bit more of a gentle hand, so to speak, because you have to invite them into this place where they feel that it's okay to be that, right? If they feel that they're always having to defend themselves and be, that was
Exactly.
something that I did in my relationships, was like put the men in the position of like I would always question them, right? Like I was trying to be perfect, but I was always telling them what they should be doing better too. And that sucks. That's a terrible thing to be receiving all the time, is the message that like you're never good enough and I am never going to be satisfied by anything that you do. So I think changing that, like taking responsibility for that myself, and that's what I was creating. Like, why were these people being distant from me? Well, I don't know. How safe do you feel if someone's always telling you something that you could do better? You
That's
know? So if that's what we want, are these deep, intimate connections, we have to look at what we're doing that is preventing that from happening, and then opening into the people that invite that into our world.
That well said, Meg. Well
Thank
said. I One thing I will say to you, and I think we discussed it earlier before the podcast.
you.
The big thing that I learned was that we have to be individuals in relationships. You
Hmm.
cannot
Hmm.
lose yourself, and you have to respect that both parties in the relationship need to feel confident in their life, know where they're going, be stable, be stoic about where they're going, and not be against each other. In fact, enhance each other. And you use
Yes.
that word to bringing people together. And now you actually, it's not the Harlequin romances and the
Hmm.
Hallmark thing. It's not
Hmm.
perfect. We're all going to have those days that are just not good. And
Hmm.
you alluded to, you have to let that space open up and
Hmm.
realize that each of us have a bad day. Each of us have a great day. We may
Hmm.
not always have the best day together. It may be one has a good
Right.
day, one doesn't. But
Right.
as you open up and you know where you're going and you know who you are and you respect each other's individuality, I think you can come together and have one wonderful relationship forever.
Yes. And I agree in what you're saying. They're like, who are we individually? Who
Mhm.
are we? Who am I that I'm bringing to you? And if I don't know that, then I'm just all over the place, and anything you say can trigger me. And, like, and we get into these terrible patterns of just feeling like you're supposed to be one way and I'm supposed to be another way. And when we aren't doing what we're supposed to do, things begin to fall apart instead of establishing, like, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is who you are. This is what you stand for. Okay, now who do we want to be? How can we focus on that moving forward, right? How can our decisions be made with these things in mind? This is what we've committed to. Having the conversations as things go, we're going to change, like we
Yeah,
discussed. I'm going to change. You're going to change. How do we want to handle the change? You know, but if I don't know who I am coming into it, I am certainly going to be easily derailed. I am certainly going to be easily questioning myself, feeling insecure, feeling like I'm somehow not meeting some standard. But if I know what I want, if I know who I am deep down in my core, then I can test that change can be the foundation of a relationship, right? Like knowing that we're going to change and how we're going to support each other through that can be a wonderful, wonderful fundamental in the relationship that we have, right? But recognizing you bring what you bring and I bring what I bring, and then what does that make together, right? And but knowing that ahead of time instead of waiting for something else to define me, I am defined before I go in. I know what I want. I know what I need. I know what's important to me. And finding a partner that wants to support that, not someone that wants you to then be a certain, like in this box. And then
yeah.
you're trying to fit in the box and you wind up super resentful and angry, because it's not aligned with your true, authentic self.
Fantastic, Meg. Now, I want to come back to you now, Meg,
Mhm.
because you've given us such good advice. So let's talk. Do you have a podcast yourself? I wasn't sure if you
I
did.
do. I do have a podcast. It's called This Isn't Working.
This isn't working.
This
I love
isn't
it.
working.
No, that's
And it
good.
is
And I'll
about
make sure all of your information is on here, but talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah, so it is goes through. So in the beginning, I did it with my partner, my current partner in life. His name is Walter Rogers, and we were doing it together at first, and then we came to some realizations that perhaps it was better that I just go off and do it on my own. Um, and it is about common relationship problems and how to handle them, like just suggestions for, and they're all less than 20 minutes long, so they're a brief listen, but they're all intended to give the listener a takeaway, like this is the problem we're having, and here are some suggestions for how things you can implement in your life and how to move through those issues, like when you realize you know you're constantly having the same fight over and over again. That's very typical, right? Like we're constantly fighting about the same thing. So it's just, then some takeaways on how might I be able to change that pattern.
Oh, that's wonderful. I like that. That's very
Hmm.
good. That's a lot of knowledge there. And
Hmm.
let's say someone wanted to reach out to you right now. What's the
Hmm.
best place to get you, Meg?
Meg at meglam.net.
Okay.
And then Instagram and Facebook, just shoot me a DM. I am having conversations in there all the time, so I'm constantly there. It's real easy to do. I feel like it's so accessible.
Well, not only are you accessible, you're a real
Mhm.
nice lady. I'm really glad that you came on today.
Thanks so much, Teresa. It's been so much fun being here.
Absolutely. And would you come back and talk to us again, Meg?
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So, to everyone, this is Meg Lamm. She's a relationship coach. You certainly want to reach out and talk to her, go to her podcast and all of her social media. I'll make sure anything that she has is on there, and certainly subscribe to any of her channels. And if you could please subscribe to mine, I truly appreciate it. I really appreciate all you listeners, and I want to be able to keep bringing Meg back here and wonderful guests like her. Thank you again. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking to you all very soon. Bye bye now.